Remember when I've done that video telling you guys how PC hardware and electronics might become 30 to 40% more expensive in 2021 and the years to come? Well, if you haven't watched that video, I discussed about pricing, availability, and a lot of other interesting things, and you can watch it by following the link in the info cards above. But in today's video, I'm going to be telling you more about how TSMC decided to cut ties with Apple, NVIDIA, AMD, Sony, Microsoft, all of those companies, and I don't mean in the sense that they're not going to work with them anymore. Instead, all of those companies that are buying tons of silicon wafers from TSMC are now going to be paying more for all of those things from TSMC, because the 3% that they used to get, because they were buying in such large quantities, no longer applies, or at least that's what I was able to learn. And I would suspect that some companies like Apple, who are buying a ton of things from TSMC, used to get more than 3%. And the problem with that is, of course, that those companies are now going to have to pay more for them. And guess who's going to have to pay for them? Apple, of course, but then you're going to be, as a consumer, you're going to be the one who's going to be affected by this, because smartphone prices, GPU prices, CPUs, all of those things might get more expensive, everything that is electronics. And that's pretty much it that I can tell you about this news right now, but it's important to know more about TSMC if you had no clue about them, and we're going to be discussing about that. And it's still unclear what drove the decision at TSMC, but I jokingly had to think about the famous Batman quote, "You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain." And of course, if you think about those things, you're like, why would they do such a thing? Well, they have a big market share and they can afford to pull all of those shenanigans. It's of course not great, but you know, they need all that moolah, as much as they can possibly get. Now, if you had no idea what TSMC is, they're one of the biggest companies in the whole semiconductor industry, and they're now the 9th highest in the world, and they have in terms of market cap, which is greater than Intel, at 550 billion US dollars. They've also just spent 89 million on a piece of land in Phoenix, Arizona, where they're going to be opening a 5nm fab, which is expected to cost around 12 billion US dollars. The only thing is production happens on the other side of the world, since making things in the US would of course imply higher labor costs, which would be passed on to you, the consumer, yet again. And I don't see all of those companies burning bridges with their consumers by upping the prices, you know, and making smartphones even more expensive than they are at the moment. Same goes for GPUs, which we've seen going down in price a little bit. So that would be really weird if they were to do that, if they decided to just, you know, make them in the States and be more expensive. But that's definitely not going to happen right now. But TSMC is most certainly not worried about the future and can afford to act in whatever way they please, since demand throughout the whole human malware pandemic has remained high, and the company does not expect its profits to decline anytime soon. In fact, Apple has just ordered a lot of chips for the production of their A15 Bionic chips, which will be featured in the iPhone 13 devices. And with TSMC already getting close to finishing up their 3nm fab, both companies are already working on 3nm chips that might make it into your next smartphone. And Apple is also working with TSMC on a smart chip that they are going to be using in their Apple smart car, and we're going to see if that comes to fruition. And I'm not here to say that TSMC holds a monopoly on the whole industry, but they of course have a big share in here, and by that big share I mean over 50%, and their whole earnings grew 81% year over year. But of course, there's also other companies like Samsung, Qualcomm, Intel, Foxconn, MediaTek, and a lot of other companies. But you know, all of them need to play the catch-up game with with TSMC, because they're a little bit behind in terms of technology. Particularly SMIC, another competitor of TSMC, is now 4 years behind TSMC in terms of technology, and Samsung is also working on catching up with TSMC, and depending on the sources that you look at, it might take them anywhere between 2 to 3 years, and some are even pointing out to Samsung needing until 2030 to catch up to TSMC in terms of technology. Now the question is, why would I mention all of those things? It's of course important to know how things work in the entire semiconductor industry to see how prices might evolve. And it's also good to note that NVIDIA is currently working with Samsung for their 8nm RTX 30 series graphics cards, but the rumor has it they might start working with TSMC for their GPUs, and that also of course still means RTX 30 series of graphics cards, and perhaps their 40 series might be created on the 5, 6, whatever nanometer node that TSMC is going to put out to their disposal. And Intel has also decided to work with TSMC despite having their own fabs, and notoriously they have ordered 200,000 or close to 200,000 silicon wafers, and that was all on 6nm, and who knows what might come next. Qualcomm is also reportedly working with TSMC on the creation of their next generation of SoCs, and it's definitely interesting to see how those things are going to evolve in the future and how this might affect pricing and availability. And of course I'll be keeping an eye out for it, but I'm here to tell you that, you know, you shouldn't just rush out and buy tech products right now because you think they're going to be more expensive in 2021 or in the years to come. You know, I'm not trying to do any kind of fear-mongering around here, far from it. I'm here to learn more about the whole semiconductor industry, you know, CPUs, electronics in general, PC hardware, all of those things. And I really hope that you guys have also learned something from this video. And I don't know, I'm not all that caught up with everything that is happening in the whole industry, so if you guys have any other ideas of what's going on and if you'd like me to cover something in particular, then just leave me a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then do make sure to give it a like and get subscribed to the channel because I have a lot more content planned for you guys. And once again, this has been Alex with the Red Elk. If you enjoyed this content, I'll catch you, I hope, in the next video. Bye.